Good morning, everybody. This is People of Substance by LemonSkies. It's been a hot second since I've done one of these. Summer has been flying by, but I'm thrilled to welcome my guest and my friend, Watt Hamlett, just like Shakespeare's Hamlet. We clarified that. And he tells me that you're getting him on Friday morning, nice and relaxed. So please say hi.
Hi, Olga. Thank you so much for having me on.
Well, let's just go ahead and jump in. So I've gotten to know you, and we're part of the same cohort of people that work with nonprofit organizations. So we've gotten to know each other, but I've never had a chance to ask you how you ended up doing what you're doing.
Yeah, well, let's get into it. So just a little bit about my business now and what I'm doing. So I'm the founder of Watt Hamlett Consulting. I'm a one-person consulting shop, and my focus in the nonprofit sector is Salesforce, and specifically helping organizations, what I call navigate and succeed in the Salesforce ecosystem. So there are a lot of companies that do the technical work with Salesforce. I work with nonprofits really ahead of that to help them be sure that they're ready for what a move to Salesforce is going to mean, because it's not inconsequential from both a financial and a time perspective and the learning and skills that are required. So that's the role that I play with my clients. And then I also work with other businesses who are interested in more effectively serving the nonprofit sector through their Salesforce services. So that's what I'm doing today. I've been doing that for 6 years now. It's kind of hard to believe that I've had my practice for that long. And in fact, I've worked for myself now longer than I've worked for any other employer, which is kind of a cool thing. But yeah, just to back up, I think, like a lot of people, working in the nonprofit sector, working in nonprofit tech was not my plan. In fact, when I was in college, the web really didn't even exist yet. And so just to think about how basically my whole career has been around this technology that wasn't anything I could have prepared for as a young person. And I got my first taste working for nonprofit when I was in college. I did a summer internship with an organization in DC. It's called the Baptist Joint Committee. They're kind of focused on First Amendment issues, separation of church and state, religious liberty. And I remember I was a rising college junior, and from a small town, and not politically oriented at all. I didn't know the difference between a liberal and a conservative at that point in my life, but really just enjoyed the idea of getting to work for a cause, getting to put my time and energy into something that was making the world a better place in some way. And so that's really been the thing that's motivated me and guided me in my work in the sector. Before I started my business 6 years ago, I realized I was kind of at the halfway point in my career. Knock on wood, if I live a nice long time, and really thought I was really open to just a reset. When I started college, I was intending to major in architecture, and then I ended up going to grad school. I wanted to kind of go the academic route and be a professor. And so I thought, well, do I still want to do those things? Do I want to make changes in my career? And what I came back to was that the nonprofit sector was the place that I, was the sector I knew the best. Salesforce was the technology that I knew the best. And so I thought the place I'm probably going to be able to have the most impact will be to kind of stay where I am and, try to bring something a little different, kind of fill a need that I did not see being filled, in helping organizations really make very smart, informed decisions if they're going to make a move to Salesforce. So here I am.
Yeah, no, I don't think. Where did you grow up? I don't think
I grew up in a small town in Central Virginia called Farmville.
Okay.
Yeah.
So local.
Have you heard of Farmville, Olga?
I probably have driven through it.
Yeah, it's the home of two colleges. There's actually it's Longwood University now is it's kind of the biggest deal going in Farmville, and my mom taught there for her career. And then there's another just a small private men's college there called Hampton-Sydney. So that's how a lot of people are aware of Farmville.
I think we've been getting brochures, and that was one on the list. Yep. So that we received. Well, so let me ask you this. When you started working with nonprofits and Salesforce and tech in general, the technical skills that people needed in nonprofits to work with technology were not what they are today, right? Like the technology has gotten so much more complex.
Yes. It's kind of it's the double-edged sword of the technology is so much more powerful now. Yeah. There's so much that can be done, and I think even as we're now getting into the AI era and just trying to get our heads around what that technology is going to mean, and clearly there's so much potential there. But the flip side of that is there's a lot of complexity, and there's a lot of specialization in a lot of cases that's needed. So the nonprofit that I worked for the longest, which was really kind of where I began my career in nonprofit tech, was the National Alliance on Mental Illness. And at the time, this was in 2002. And so they were really just implementing their first kind of digital platform at that time. Yeah. They had a static HTML website, they had a listserv, but they were implementing technology that would let them have a more integrated digital approach. And I was sort of the one person to manage all of that: email marketing, online advocacy. I helped them build their first peer-to-peer fundraising tool, email marketing, CMS, I was able to own all of that for a national organization.
Yeah.
And I just don't know that that's not really even possible anymore, because the disciplines have matured so much, right? How to effectively use digital technology has really matured, and just being able to master those individual technologies has become has become harder to do. So I think that's part of the dynamic of where we are today. Is the tools are plentiful, the tools are powerful, and it's figuring out how to help the people work effectively with the tools to help them advance the mission.
I love that. And probably in those days you had a cold server room and you had a webmaster, right?
Yeah, we had a server closet. We had an IT guy who kept all that humming. And I, and webmaster was one of the hats that I wore, in addition to the lead email marketer, et cetera, et cetera. So
I mean, not to date ourselves, but who hasn't, right?
Yeah, but I mean what a great opportunity to start a career where you're sort of there at the beginning as these tools are coming into the market. And I feel grateful for that, because I have a little bit of understanding about a lot of different things that I think help my clients as they're trying to navigate these choices.
I really relate to that, kind of being there from the beginning, when it's like, oh, what if we just sent an email and asked for a donation? Like, what would happen? So I definitely feel like we were there.
Yeah, and I for better and for worse. I mean, I remember one of the so we adopted this technology platform that I don't think exists anymore in the market. They were rather niche, but they were kind of end to end, which was great. But realizing at some point that we had this SQL Server database that had the unencrypted credit card numbers of all the online donors, right? Just didn't
Yep.
We didn't know that it was not
Yep.
built in a way that it was encrypted. I just remember one day being in the back end and poking around in the SQL Server and realizing like, oh my gosh, these are all credit card numbers. So little things like that, right? That would never, the tools are so mature today. That's not something nonprofits even have to worry about. But early on, it was not something that had been solved for.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, they kind of emerged over time. Well, on technology, let me pivot to the question, and that's something I've been thinking about a lot. How do we strike a balance between innovation and doing kind of staying on trends and making sure that we're maximizing what's possible, but not chasing the shiny objects?
Yeah. I see that as a thing that, I mean, I think we struggle with that as individuals in our lives, right?
Absolutely.
And certainly in our organizations, and that's that's actually a big part of how I work with my clients. Is nonprofits can't do what they do in the 21st century without digital technology. It's not an option. And it's interesting, back when I first did that internship in DC, there were maybe a couple of computers in the office, but digital technology was not necessary for this organization to do what it did. There were telephones and there were yellow legal pads and typewriters, and that was the extent of it. But it's just not an option anymore. And from my own perspective, working with Salesforce as a technology I know the best, it's very good. It can do a lot of things. A lot of organizations are successful with it, but it's because it's so broad and deep. It's very easy for organizations to get in over their heads with it.
Yeah.
And so a big focus of what I do is around readiness, and first of all, helping organizations understand, is this technology that they're considering, will it actually do the thing they think it will do? Because sometimes it's hard to tell, is this technology right for us or not? So helping them get clarity about that, and then helping them make sure that they're ready for it. So is this a good time in our organization for this technology?
Mm-hmm.
And that gives them all kinds of things around, everything from the vision of the organization, the skills of individual staff members, the other technologies that would need to be assessed or accommodated in a technology move, the budget that you have to work with, the timeline that you're on. And I'd much rather see an organization stay where they are and get better at using the tools that they have than make a move to something that they're not ready for. And that's part of the counsel that I try to provide. And I know there's a lot of, we have other peers in the space who also kind of take that same approach of we've sort of been there, we've used the tools, we know what they can do, and we also don't want to see organizations squander their resources on something that's not going to give them a return.
Well, and sometimes it's configurations or people factor, training people how to use the tools. So it's not always throw a baby out with the bathwater and swap out all your tools. It's sort of what do you already have that can be maximized.
Right. And one of the words that I've kind of grown to love around all this is discipline.
Mm-hmm.
I think I think kind of back to the shiny object question is, it can be convenient and alluring to think, if we just had this new thing, this new tool, it's going to transform the way we work. It's going to make it all better. And again, I think that can be true, but without consistent processes, without good internal alignment, without doing the things that you're going to have to do to make the technology work, it's unlikely that you're going to find the level of success that you see the vendor showing you in the demo.
Right.
Right. If you're not willing to just do the work of keeping your list clean, And knowing how to use the reporting tools you have so you can understand if you're, moving closer to your goals or not. Just those very basic things around execution are so critical. And I think it's where I see a lot of organizations struggling.
Yeah. So to kind of switch gears in another direction, and I mentioned this at the top of the hour, you and I got to know each other. We're part of the same cohort, and we get together every so often, just on Zoom. I think it started in the pandemic time, and we just kind of open-ended conversation between people in nonprofit space. Some of them are more technically oriented, some are more around strategic communications and marketing, like myself. How do you find your people, and who are the people that you keep in touch with over the years?
I feel so when I was at that inflection point of thinking about what the next half of my career would look like, that was one of the assets that I became so aware of, was the network that I had. One of the places I was really fortunate to work in my career was Convio. And so many of the folks from that company have stayed around in the nonprofit sector, in tech companies and consulting companies inside of nonprofits, doing new and interesting things. And so I that's been a huge part of what's helped me stay in the sector, helped me stay connected and aware of what's happening in the sector, and has provided me with opportunities for my business. So I don't I don't underestimate the value of having a good network. And in fact, when I was thinking about starting my own business and leaving the Salesforce consulting company that I was working for, I leaned into my network to help me validate that decision, right? Talking to folks like Maureen Walbioff, Alice Hendricks, people who had gone out on their own to seek their counsel. And so those folks that helped me make the decision to go out on my own are people that I'm still in touch with, whose perspective I still really value. So I kind of have this long tail of folks that I know, but then one of the things that I hadn't really thought through, I wasn't really anticipating in starting my business, because I had this image that in starting my business, I was going to go out and basically reap everything that I had sown throughout my career, right? I was going to be kind of harvesting from all of these prior seeds that had been planted. And the thing that's been pleasantly surprising to me is that in these 6 years, all these new seeds have been planted, and these new connections are forming, and so that's pretty cool. I think in terms of just practically, what I found really helpful is in-person events. I think there's something that's almost magical about meeting people in person in the context of industry events. I know you and I were just at the Bridge conference. I go to a number of Salesforce events throughout the year, and I don't know exactly what it is, but the difference in the connection that you feel with somebody when you meet them in person versus if your relationship is strictly virtual is quite significant. So I don't underestimate that. And in fact, someone reached out to me who's connected with me on LinkedIn, who I do not know, but it was kind of sweet. It was a person very early in their career, and they reached out and said, "Hey, I'm going to be going to my first Salesforce event, and just wonder if you have any advice for me." And they were saying, like, I'm thinking about these different sessions, and I'm not sure how to best spend my time. They were really kind of wanting to do it right, and I just thought that was so cool. And so the part of the advice I gave was set a goal for yourself to meet 3 people, because it's easy, especially if you're there by yourself. It's easy to just go to the sessions, do the learnings. But for me, equally important, if not really more important for one's career, is to just have relationships. And so that was the recommendation that I gave him. And then he reported back to me afterwards that he had actually met more, like even more people than that. He was so surprised at how many connections he'd made at that event. And I think, some of those will maybe career long connections that you'll have.
I will point out you're a lot taller in person. So I'm just going to put that out there. But I agree with you completely. And I think connections that are built on just genuinely getting to know people. So it's not sort of very mercenary quid pro quo. If I get to know you, I'm going to hit you up for something, but just really finding human connections.
Yeah. And I think also being generous with one's introductions to others. That's something yes. Again, as I'm a little further along in my career, try to think about how can I help connect people. And I think that's essentially what you're doing here with people of substance, right? Is you're helping to introduce people in your network to folks that they don't know. And I've certainly gotten to know people by virtue of what you're doing with your, kind of the way you're being generous with giving a platform for people to share their stories.
Well, thank you for saying that. And I try to really kind of take it beyond what you do and more focus on who you are, right? Mm-hmm. So because we're motivated by certain things, and we all have backstories and we all have interesting things about us that are not always evident in the professional setting. So speaking of that, I had some questions for you. So usually to prepare for these interviews, even with people that I've known for a while, I try to kind of just do a little background search. And I've discovered that you're a published author. So can you speak to that? 2 books that I'm aware of?
Yes, I have written 2 children's books. One is called Reston A to Z, and one is called The Day in Herndon. And let's see how to. It's maybe not something you would expect to find what somebody like me has done, but I think a couple of things came together in me wanting to do those books. One is having kids, and story time being really kind of the highlight of every day of just kind of getting in a chair or getting to bed with them and snuggling and reading books, and just the bonding that happens in those moments is, again, kind of for me it was true for me as a kid with my parents, and it was something that was special to me with my kids. And this was about 10 years ago that I sort of had this urge to scratch a creativity itch. And one of the things that I had been doing was, so I lived in the town of Reston in Northern Virginia. And Reston was one of the first planned communities in America. It was founded by a guy named Robert E. Simon. So his initials, RES, why it's called Reston. And part of the design of the community was it was intended to be a very inclusive place from like an economic standpoint, to have all kinds of different housing options for people. It was racially integrated at a time in Virginia where that was not common. So it was a special place to me, and part of the design was preserving a lot of nature. And so I would just be out on walks and would take pictures of just beautiful nature around Reston. And I thought I'd love to be able to kind of share these pictures in some way with other people. And so these kind of two ideas went together. It's like, I wonder if there's something I can do for kids that would help kind of teach them about their community and kind of help them see what a special place it is. And that's where the idea for the book was born. So it's an A to Z book. So it takes you, through the alphabet with places around Reston, starting with that letter. And it's mixed media, so it's photographs. And then there's an illustrated character called Robert E. Squirrel, who is the tour guide in the book. And actually one of my neighbors offered to be my illustrator. Turns out she's fantastic at it. And so she created this character and made him look a little bit like Robert E. Simon, the founder of Reston. And so this squirrel takes you around Reston to all of these places, and there's rhyming verse. And so anyway, it was a lot of fun to write. After the book came out, I was able to take it out into the community. I was able to go and read it in classrooms with kids, which was so cool. I was able to go to local community events and set up a table and sell the book, and it was just a lot of fun. It was never intended to be a money maker or catapult me into authordom. It really was just a fun creative outlet for me, and had so much fun with that one. Ended up doing a second book for the community right next door to Reston, which is Herndon. And Herndon was originally a farming area. It was a dairy farming area. So in that book, was same concept, but it was a group of farm animals that escaped from Frying Pan Park, which is a park in Northern Virginia. Yes. It's a working farm, and they go and spend the day in Herndon and see all the fun things there, and then come back to the farm at night. So yeah, that's my literary career, and probably have closed that chapter. But it was certainly a really fun outlet while it lasted.
Well, this was a delightful surprise when I ran across it. And the Frying Pan Park, I've been there many times. There's no actual cooking involved, just so people understand. There's no actual frying pans. That's just the name of it. And it's a farm.
Name, yeah.
They're usually like cute piglets, and there's cows and chickens, and it's really, really cute.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for being a wonderful guest. This was fantastic. Thank you for all you do in the sector. And we'll drop the link to the books if anybody has Northern Virginia children in the area. They're delightful, and just really appreciate getting to know you in different ways over the past few years. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Olga. Thank you so much for having me on.
Good to see you.